welcome to another episode of Get a Good Start. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Get a Good Start. Visit us on getagoodsstart.com for the accompanying blog to this podcast, which provides additional information about my guests, links to the information we discuss, and ways you can put into action what we talk about here on the show, so you can get a good start. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Get a Good Start. If you are a rock star and you need your album cover designed, or if you are a mega restaurant chain and you want your hot sauce packets to look cool, or if you are a distiller and you want your branding and packaging to clearly represent your brand, you're going to call my friend Todd, who is the owner and the creative director of Meat and Potatoes Design and Branding. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's been 30 years since we've been in the same space together. Yeah, since we've been side by side, physically side by side. One thing I've always admired about you from what I remember back in school, and certainly, following your career, is that you have a clear process. You have a very clean design. Even some of your instructionals on lynda.com, there's clearly a process, and that, I'm sure, leads you to have a good start to whatever you do, is having a plan or a process. When you think about that phrase, getting a good start, what does it mean to you, Todd, as it applies to your life or your workday?
That's actually a really good question, because that answer was a little different probably in 2019 than 2020. But I still kept some of my same daily routines, which was for me physically, just to get up and start my day. I don't really think about everything that has to get done. I wait till I sit down. I need to enjoy my morning, enjoy my day, get ready for work mentally, and just like personal stuff first. And just prepare for clocking in at 9. And it doesn't mean my brain doesn't think. I'll wake up at 4 in the morning and have some creative idea and write it down, go back to sleep. But the process of just getting a clean start mentally, because you're going all day, just starts with mentally keeping myself clear, and then starting it, knowing I start at 9 every day, West Coast time.
Right.
But yeah, that really helps me just to kind of have a clean start and have the time for myself first, and then the time for work on a daily basis.
Behind you is a bunch of the albums that you've designed over time. It's a walk down memory lane, and certainly the one directly over your right shoulder, which was your Grammy nominated, cover, which is in and of itself an accomplishment. But if you could think about going back past the genesis of any of those album covers to the time right after college, when you were freelancing at the music magazine, and you could give yourself a little piece of advice, knowing what you know today, go back in time to that time period and say to yourself, hey, young Todd, you need to know this. What would you tell yourself?
I would probably tell myself not to stress too much about it, just to stay my course. Because I knew that when we went to school, I mean, come on, you and I were two of the people that just focused and did a lot of work. We'd always come in prepared. Mm-hmm. I continued that, with my job, my first jobs outside of college. I didn't take it for granted. I'd moved to a big city, Los Angeles, and there was a lot of distractions, but I stayed focused on, getting to work every day, learning, because it's different when you're out of school to when you have an actual job, and the pace is much faster. And I was terribly nervous. I mean, I was terrified. And if I could have just put my hand on my own shoulder and said, Todd, it's going to be okay. Just take a deep breath, keep going through every day like you are, stay the course, because everything you do is going to get you one step further down that chain of knowledge and understanding, and arming yourself with the tools to continue and grow as a creative. I see a lot of, I've hired a lot of designers too, and I've seen them make the mistakes of being almost too nervous to work, or distracted by outside stuff, being in a big city. And they make mistakes in their careers that they could have if they would have, if they'd just stayed the course. But really just stay focused. which is what I did. I would just been reassuring to myself.
I know you've been back to school several times. You've been mentor, you were head of the creative director for the in-house agency they put together there that you were integral in. If you were to be the keynote speaker at next year's graduation, and it was a physical graduation again, and everybody was in a place, and they put you up on stage and said, Todd, give them all one piece of advice they all need to know. Today's graduates are much, much different than we were when we graduated. What kind of advice would you offer them?
Well, I'd have to say the one thing I would tell all those students staring back at me, trying not to be nervous that there's a sea of people paying attention to me and hanging on every word I say. It's not far off from what I just talked about in terms of telling myself some advice. But I'd probably half scare them and half reassure them. There's a lot of competition out there. If it's not you, it's going to be someone else waiting right behind you in line. So whereas you might be graduating today and you have a wealth of knowledge from where you're at, you also have a lifelong lasting relationships that you just built in school. Don't lose touch of your friends. Keep in touch. That is the first networking you've started. Same with your favorite professors back at school. They will continue to teach you and be there to support you, because it is scary out there. You do have to try to be the best that you can be, but at the same time, do what you love to do. And you probably can't go wrong. You have got to fail, and you have got to in order to succeed. So you can't be afraid of learning more after school, because what you know now is so little to what you're going to learn when you go down that road, and you're going to need all the support you can get. So it is a world of relationship building, and it is a world of trying to do what you love to do. And you'll know it when you're in it. And some days you'll think you hate it, and others you will love it. But eventually you grow to learn when you're on the right path or not. And if you're not, take a hard left and rethink your career.
Truer words have not been spoken. Todd, when you started your design studio, what was the hardest lesson you learned? And you're not just a designer now, right? You're the business owner, you're the decision maker, you're the bill payer, you're HR, your facilities manager, you're everything. Let's talk to the young folks out there, the young designers who say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start my own agency. I'm going to be a rock and roll star like Todd. What do they need to know?
I think my path was, after school was, I was very fortunate, but there's not one thing. Scott, come on, there's a million,
I know. Well, give me the top three.
I'll give you the top three. I'll just sort of tell you. Yeah, I'll tell it in a story where I went to work at a record label, and that was sort of my second gig. I was at a music magazine first, then a record label within a year as a freelancer. And I had a great mentor. So for one, and I've given this advice to some other people, first job out of school, who take a job where that art director or creative director is going to teach you. Like, smaller seems to have been better for me, rather than these dreams of big corporate company and you're just a cog in a wheel. You could still be a cog in a wheel, but the person you're going to work for, are they going to teach you? Or are they just going to let you push buttons and repeat and do the same thing? You're not going to grow and learn. When I went to a record label, I was side by side with an art director. Like, I didn't have my own desk or computer. Like, computers were just kind of getting used. So I was kind of teaching him how to use the computer, and I was doing all the things, but I was learning side by side with a great art director, Tim Stedman. He was amazing. And so that kind of trained me to learn as much as I could from every other person in the company. So within a year or two, I was sitting in the production meetings. I was, interacting with promotion department, sales department, publicity department, finance department. And I just learned from everybody. And all this helped me build knowledge of more and more like comfort to go off and start my own business. So I had a learning platform that wasn't just, I'm a kid out of school, I'm going to go start a company, or I hate working for a big company and, because my boss doesn't teach me anything, or I don't like this job, I'm going to go start my own thing. Well, you need to have something to pull from. You need to have a reference point of, what it is the people you're trying to work for need. And unless you have the basic understandings that you are, as a designer, if you'd like me to speak to that, this is a service business. you're going to be an artist to make paintings or photographs, it's different. But what I do is a service to other people to lift their products, their image, their company up. So as long as you have that reference point, that you're there to provide that service, there's nothing you can't do other than probably your own taxes, because that's really hard. The finance is the crappiest part. As a creative, forget it. You're not supposed to know numbers. No. And actually, I went through that with another creative last week. But we, the other parts of the business are horrible to run. Find good people that will help you and not steer you wrong. But man, the ups and downs of running a business on a daily basis is difficult. You wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, let's go to the worst thing, Todd. Let's say, when your agency was really large, what would you say was the most difficult thing for you to do as an owner?
The most difficult thing to do in the company when it was large?
Yeah.
I think I missed being able to spend enough time to be able to get my hands on the work myself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's become true for any other owner of a company that I've spoken with, that it doesn't matter what kind of company, that they're not getting into the day-to-day themselves or doing what they started that company to do, which was, do it for themselves and be your own boss and do this. Well, you end up being everybody else's boss. So that takes up a lot of your time. So the getting to have my hands on the work myself was probably the biggest bummer about having a larger thing. So I sat and negotiated contracts more than I did, designing a cover.
You have to delegate, and to delegate, you have to have people you really trust to do that.
You do. And you have to mentor. Yeah. And you have to mentor. And that's how I actually got more involved with SCAD, was to go back and do mentorships or for the department, or do lectures, or even those LinkedIn, the lynda.com, which are now on LinkedIn, but the classes I did online, it's that because I wanted to give back more. I couldn't even get around to doing it enough in my own company, but that's important, because if you don't train the people under you to how you believe a client should be treated, do you know what I mean? This is good knowledge for anybody. It's not like do as I say. It's more about, I'm helping you understand the formula I've learned that makes a client very happy. So this is how we treat them. This is how we do. This is how we keep timelines. This is how we talk to them on a daily basis and communicate. And that's what has made my business successful. And I just try and pass that on. If you don't have the time to do that, then your company can't grow in the same direction you intended it to. Because the more you lose control of, the communications between your staff and the people outside your company, they're doing the direct communication now to multiple clients. You don't know how those relationships are going till a client calls you up really upset with someone in your company in terms of how they're communicating with them. I've had to field that a few times.
Thinking about that time when you were delegating a lot of work and negotiating a lot of contracts, certainly you had to hire a lot of people at one point. Right. And you get these resumes and these portfolios, and they're all outstanding. What's the one thing we could tell students going out there in the world looking for a job at a firm like yours, or a big firm, small firm, doesn't matter where? What did you look for in these designers that set them apart from all the other ones that had the same book in their hand and had the same kind of sensibilities, other than the design skills? What was that thing that this guy's got something?
Yeah. So if we say equal portfolio or equal skill set aside, it comes down to that communication. How are you in an interview? What is your personality like? Because it's not every person is right for every job. And I think everybody needs to remember that, because every company is different, and every company's personality and the culture within there, in terms of how those people work together that are already there before you. How are the relationships between the people who work together, between the employer and the employees on a daily basis? You're trying to fit into something that is a culture, and you don't have to change yourself to fit that culture. That's not the point. The point is finding the right place for you, your personality, your level of skill. And it's just like dating in a way. It's really weird. You're not going to ever want to talk to that next person again if you don't gel, right? And it might be you. And I've recently had friends who former designers of mine, employees of mine, tell me about their interviews with new jobs and new things, and they think it's going right, and after 5 interviews it just didn't fit, but they had red flags and warnings in the beginning that these people think a little different, or not like they do. So it's okay. It's okay if you don't quite fit that culture. You will find they will help you see if you fit in, and if you have a red flag, don't do another interview. Don't worry about it. There's another job around the corner. I think when you have that right fit, your boss wants to spend more time and encourage you. And you're gonna learn, and you're gonna discover skills you never had. When there's a weird clash of personalities, or you're just not approachable in a way, or your boss isn't approachable and you don't feel like you can go to them for help or advice, there's a barrier. If you're already afraid to go to your boss to talk about something or to learn something, you're not gonna learn. That's not a good level of communication. So yeah, that's a huge factor. If you've got a great portfolio, no matter what, or you're qualified for any job, it really is going to boil down to just the culture and the personality where you want to be.
So let's talk directly to the design students now out there looking for a job in this virtual landscape, right? Because I really think the traditional 9 to 5 working in a design studio job is kind of floundering right now because of all of the, it's almost design on demand websites that are out there. 50, I saw some of the pricing, what people are paying for certain things, and how could you not go to them and get like 10 different designs and say, oh, I'm going to pay, $100 for this. How does today's design, how do they compete with that?
Well, I would say first, as a designer, please don't participate in those particular websites, because that undercuts the entire market for every designer who wants to be able to make it.
Thank you for reiterating what I've been telling everyone I get in contact with.
Do not support. I'm sorry, but there are certain things that just should not have been invented on the internet, and that is one of them.
Yeah.
Because I've had plenty of clients that say they went there and they are now coming to the proper people to think it through, because you're not even doing the client any benefit by doing that for them, because it's a one and done, and they've got a lot more to do with those particular designs after they buy it. How do you compete? I would say, your body of work, you grow from working with others. So even though right now we're mostly virtual like this, it doesn't mean you can't still work together. I mean, I'm on the phone and I'm on digital every day with my designers, and we're kicking off with the production meeting every day. We're checking in, reviewing designs, and having critiques. And I think even if you're not in a job yet, and you have, this is where I go back to like your friends that are designers, your that you graduated with, your professors, critiquing is a big part of college. It's also a big part of the everyday work life in a studio. At least that's the way it is at Meat and Potatoes, and has been in the past. We would gather first round of comps, pin them up on the wall, like, and have 6 of us in a room and starting to talk about what we like and didn't like. We'd still carried on the college critiques about what we want to do and what's right. The difference is what's right for the client, right? Mm-hmm. So put yourself outside. I don't have a job yet. I'm still trying to make a few more pieces for my portfolio to cut through the clutter, but it's reaching back out to the people and discussing the work you're putting in. One, what that does is it keeps you in an environment where you're working with other people and you're used to criticism. And that also prepares you for that interview to get that job. It's not just closed off working. Let's say you're working from home, trying to make some pieces for your portfolio because you're not getting any bites, and mom and dad are, yelling at you to do the yard work. Well, you still got to go communicate with people outside your pod. And even if it's virtual like this, make up projects for yourself, whatever it is. And the getting in again to a studio is find the kinds of places you want to work and hit them up. Where you want to live. Now, sometimes it doesn't make a difference right now, right. But understand the type of work that you want to do. You'll know it by just doing your research. Yeah.
What is the skill set you see that has evolved now on the computer that's very important for a designer to have? Is it knowing how to video edit? Is it to, getting more involved in motion graphics, like something like Motion on the Apple computer? Or is it something else? What's that technical skill set that you see as a business owner and working with a lot of people in the industry, particularly I would call it on the cutting edge of design, which is in the music and the arts that you're involved in? What's that one skill set, the technical tool that they need to be learning right now?
That is a very good question. Who asked that question?
My friend Sean, he's now the creative director over at the bank. He was my junior designer. I hired him from a little print shop. Uh, he didn't. He still was getting his design chops about him, but he knew how to put ink on paper, and he knew how
Mm-hmm.
to typeset. And because he knew those things, that's why I hired him over like 30 other people, because I knew he had some basic foundations and he was really good at it.
So glad you told me that, because here's what, and glad you asked this question, because the problem I've had with my particular company is we do make printed things, and printed things aren't going away just
Hmm.
because we have an internet and social media and things live online. Things still do get printed, and it is a rare person that you can find that understands the world between print and digital. So the thing that the design programs, look, the ones I use are Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator. That is it on a daily basis. I am personally am not, editing video. I don't have an interest in video. We do make animated GIFs. Can do it right in Photoshop. Doesn't matter. Because set up your
Hmm.
timeline. Dude,
Yep.
it's about the extent of it. What I have found is that for me personally as a designer, the things that exist on the internet have very short lifespan. They can go tomorrow, can be updated the next day. Forget it, it's done, it's gone. When I print something, I have a physical thing, whether it's a product. I'm looking at, I wish you could see the studio, but I'm looking at album packages all around me. I'm looking at liquor bottles and samples and print samples and all kinds of things. It is really rare for me to find a designer that understands CMYK versus RGB. And let's just say you're a designer and you're on the ground level, and your art director asks you to put together this logo style guide, and it's got typefaces and the logo and the do's and don'ts, and it's got the colors, and you type it in your RGB values. And you need to also do your CMYK values. What designer do you know about that? Do you know what that means? And your PMS colors. You don't use a PMS color unless you're printing. You don't use
Right.
CMYK unless you're printing, but yet they are two of the four color profiles that you would use when you're setting up something. So why is that? Well, you better know, just like someone who only knows print, you better know why you're using the other color profiles. So the most important tool, having a job working printing, is probably one of the greatest values. And you hired that person.
Yep.
And I would too. And I have in the past, because someone has been working at a print shop. It is really difficult to find that. I mean, in my world, look, these things get printed still. It's
Yep.
not going to go away. You're always going to have something physical. We'll go digital, but we'll come back to print. And it goes from sector to sector. Look at digital books.
Right.
They still exist, but it didn't kill the book industry. You still buy hardcover and paperback books. You still need to print them.
Right.
So yeah, and the only thing that's really changed over the years is a lot of those things are so automated in printing that you don't get the time to go press check it. So you
Right.
have to make sure your work is right from the beginning, seeing one digital proof versus one physical proof to hold in your hand in
Right.
correct color. You better know it, because once it goes, it's gone.
Todd, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show. For all the viewers out there and the listeners, go to meatoes.com, MEATOES.com, and check out the body of work that Todd has amassed over the years. He truly is one of my proudest alumni. I'm proud of for all his work, because I think even though we haven't been close over the years other than through social media, I really appreciate and respect his design sensibilities and his talent. Certainly someone who drove me to be better designer in school. But Todd, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Scott, thank you for having me. And, you know, we can do this again. If any of your listeners you get a lot of questions, let's answer them and hop back on.
Awesome.
Happy to be back. I'm really proud of you, man. And doing this podcast is amazing. The knowledge you're all going to gain from continuing to listen to Scott's stuff is going to be immense. So thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
Take care.